Some families start businesses with legacy and longevity in mind. Others, like our guest today, build a culture of servant leadership that can't help but produce a generational legacy. We discuss some of the milestones that develop this kind of culture, as well as what we can do to continue to foster it in future generations. Plus, Henry will ask for some advice for kids interested in being a part of their family business. All this and more is coming up on this episode of Building Unbreakable Brands. Welcome to Building Unbreakable Brands, the podcast where we talk to business leaders with a generational mindset. I'm Meghan Lynch. I'm an advisor to family businesses and founder of 6Point, a brand strategy agency that helps generational brands honor their past while evolving for the future. Today, we're speaking with Jenn Barlund, a proud third-generation owner of Falcon Plastics, who combines her deep-rooted family legacy with a forward-thinking approach to drive the company's success. Welcome, Jenn. So excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about kind of the history of Falcon Plastics and what you guys have been up to. You're looking at your 50th anniversary. Is that correct?
May will be our 50 years in business.
Awesome. So Falcon Plastics is a custom plastic molder, and I know you guys have the capacity to engineer, manufacture, assemble, distribute products in a wide variety of markets, and that you've had a lot of growth since your founding back in the 70s. But I'm curious, as you look back on these past 50 years, are there any specific, turning points in the company's history that you can identify now looking back?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been multiple turning points. And actually, Falcon Plastics did not start out. My grandfather and grandmother, Don and Carol are their names. They are the ones that started Falcon Plastics, and they did not start Falcon Plastics with the thought in mind that it was going to be a family business.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So there was a couple key turning points there where it started out as a business and one of his customers owned 50% of it, of Falcon, and he went to go sell the business, and they had mentioned a few things to him that they wanted him to do, letting some employees go, cleaning some things up, and before he sold all of his shares to them. And he walked out and called my grandma and said, well, we're now proud owners of 100% of Falcon Plastics. And so he led much of the way, very similar to how I lead today. And I attribute a lot of that to him, people focused and putting our people first. And so that was when he decided, and I think it was 1997, that's when he decided that, okay, this is going to be a family business. And so that was kind of a key turning point for Falcon Plastics and kind of who we are and what that legacy was going to be at that point. And then there was another key point where my father and my uncle are involved in as second generation. And my dad had just landed a huge account, Toshiba, who's one of our current customers now, and it basically more than doubled the size of the business. And that was another key turning point in Falcon Plastics history as well.
Wow. Doubled the size of the business within what period of time?
Overnight.
Wow.
They transferred some molds in, and basically from that point on, and I wasn't involved in that point. That was when I was really, really young. And so, that sounded to me like it was kind of an all hands on deck. And shortly after that is when Don had talked about going to sell the shares and, kind of, hey, we grew this to what we knew we could, and let's be done with it now. And so, yeah, that sounded like it was a little chaotic. To more than double the size of your business overnight is a pretty difficult thing to do. So
yeah, I'm curious. Do you think that there's any ripple effects in terms of how the business has grown since, either that you guys have created a muscle for rapid growth like that, or a little bit of a shying away from doing that kind of?
Oh, definitely. I think there were lots of lessons from that, and in the fact that, and when one customer is 60% of your business, it's that's a big chunk of your business that you're putting all eggs into that basket. And so I think that's really reframed our mindset as we grow too, of we want to be diversified. And not only in one facility, we want to be diversified in all 4 of our U.S. facilities and what we can control there, because something like COVID hits and that if all your eggs are in a couple customers' baskets, that can go really quickly. And that, that was shrinking significantly in, a week or two time span. And so, yeah, we definitely viewed growth differently after that Toshiba experience. And like I said, Toshiba's still a customer today. They've been a very good customer to us. And so fortunately, it all played out as it did. But we've definitely taken some lessons from that.
Yeah. When you're looking at a diversification strategy like that and really trying to make sure that you're both spreading out your risk and growing your capabilities kind of evenly across the company, how do you balance diversification with focus and kind of keep both of those in mind when you're growing, not turn diversification into almost like an excuse to just be into everything and
yeah, that is difficult because you don't want to be everything to everybody. Or, I mean, at one point we did, right? We kind of had a shotgun approach for sales, and it was like, we will do anything for anybody, which is great. I mean, it was embracing our entrepreneurial spirit that's how Falcon came to be, right? And so we want to support that in others. But, we're a much better supplier to our partners when we're focused. And so that is a tough balance. It really is. Because when you're looking at diversifying customers and markets and et cetera, there's times where you have to then add capabilities to your plate, like you mentioned. And so it's just been something where we've decided to be very thoughtful about it. So, we're looking at adding a new capability right now, but we've done a lot of research and we've collected data that says, okay, there are X number of millions of dollars of opportunities out there that we've just heard ourselves. So we feel it's responsible to move forward and look at this, adding two-shot molding to our capabilities, because it will not only, one, expand the markets that we serve now, but two, we'll be able to serve our current partners better. And so we just kind of look at it in that approach and make sure that, one, it's not only going to allow us to diversify, but two, is it going to allow us to provide our current customers with more? Mm-hmm. And that's really important to us because we'd rather have, partnerships versus hundreds of customers. We'd rather have some main solid partnerships. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also thinking about turning points and transition points within the business, you mentioned kind of like the early transition from generation 1 to generation 2, and then obviously you're now generation 3 in the business. Do you have a sense of like the difference between those two transitions and either how they went or similarities between them of like what you guys have learned as a generational company and what you've tried to keep in generational transition?
Yeah, from what I've heard, G2 to G3 went a lot smoother than G1 to G2. But I like I mentioned to you at the beginning, Falcon wasn't started as a family business. And so my grandparents actually have 4 kids, 3 boys and a daughter. And so I think that was a difficult, and my dad and my uncle Jay, my dad's name is Guy. So Guy and Jay were the two that were very interested in leading the business. And so I think that was a difficult thing for my grandma and grandpa to say, okay, who's going to lead the business? Who's going to be the president? And Guy and Jay have always been really great business partners. They have different attributes that make them work very well together. And so at the end of the day, I think Guy and Jay just came together and said, look, we don't really care about titles. We're both going to lead the business and we're going to communicate to each other. And that's what it's going to be. But it sounds like it was a long process to get there. And so when Guy and Jay looked at transitioning, I think they had having that experience being on the other side of things helped them walk us through what that transition looked like. And we, as a family group, have worked quite closely with a group called Prairie Family Business Association that's out of the South Dakota area. And so, but they are a resource to a number of different family businesses, even globally now. And so they've helped us through a lot of those conversations and planning and making that transition process a lot smoother. And we're also a different business today than we were when Guy and Jay transitioned in. And so it's a much bigger beast too. So we started doing a lot of that planning in 2020, which was an interesting time to be doing that. But also, I think gave Guy and Jay the confidence and myself and Kyle, who's also a third generation, that we could lead the business. If we can lead the team through COVID and what that looked like, we could, continue to lead the business. So.
You're listening to Building Unbreakable Brands, the podcast all about brand stewardship and crafting an enduring legacy. I'm speaking with Jenn Barlund, a proud third-generation owner of Falcon Plastics. Under her leadership, Falcon Plastics has embraced cutting-edge technology while upholding its long-standing commitment to quality and sustainability. Jenn, one of the core brand promises of Falcon Plastics is a commitment to on-time delivery for customers. And I'm curious how this commitment to on-time delivery and kind of attention to like the speed of business as affecting your internal culture.
That's a good question. It definitely does, right? Because there are times where we have to work overtime or, we're stretching ourselves a bit to get orders out. But when I look at an overall average of like 99.9% delivery is what most of our facilities are riding right around, it's like, that's an insane target for our industry. And for us to continue to uphold that value that's been ingrained in us. And that was Dawn's two biggest things were quality and on-time delivery, which can sometimes be battling metrics, right?
Right.
Because if you're dealing with quality and you have poor quality, you don't want to ship bad parts, which then could mean that you're going to be late in order to get good parts. And so it is definitely a battle internally sometimes. And it's why we preach internally that we don't build quality into our products, we build quality products. And so that starts at the very beginning when we are helping our customers, if they want us to help them with part design, with tool design and build, and then it flows all the way through our product launch and into our everyday product runs. And so we want to be building that quality in up front versus checking quality in our parts as we make them. And so that's what we just try to continue to make sure that our teams are focused on building quality and upfront so that we're not in the end being late to our customers because of quality or other issues. And so, yeah, I would say it definitely impacts culture, but it gives our employees also something to be proud of, right? Mm-hmm. Because we are doing things internally that others aren't doing in the industry.
Yeah, it gives them something to stand for. And I think, again, we often talk about brand as your reputation, like what other people say about you, not necessarily what you say about yourself. And so I would imagine having that kind of word on the street of, these guys hit these metrics or they do these kind of impossible delivery feats must be a huge source of pride for employees.
It's prideful, yeah, and it gets us repeat business. And so we found, some of our customers we've had since conception, a lot of our customers we've had since conception or, 20, 30 plus years. And so we find that even we have a low loss rate of customers, but even if we do end up losing customers or specific products, let's say a customer comes to us and says, we want to be, we need a disaster recovery plan. So we've got to have you doing half the work and someone else doing half the work. We find that most of the time that work ends up coming back to us because of the quality and on-time delivery that we supply. So it's been something that has really allowed us to generate new sales without really having to work at it. And it's really given us a name in the market. And that's really what we're looking for. We want to be, a world-class molder. That's where we want to be. That's where our employees want to be. And so that's, definitely a source of pride.
Mm. Do you have a sense of what the biggest brand asset of Falcon Plastics is in the marketplace?
I would say, a lot of that revolves around our customer service, which includes that on-time delivery. But our customer service, I think, goes above and beyond because we aren't going to be the lowest cost molder. We just aren't. And we know that. And that's okay. We don't want to be. We don't want to compete with low-cost countries. We want to make sure that you're getting good quality parts when you need them. And so for us, it's just being that partner that can take your product from a drawing on a napkin all the way to parts being delivered at your dock. And so for us, it's all those things in between. We're a one-stop shop in that way. And so I think that's R&D time that we put in with our customers really is something that they value, and it's not something we're going to nickel and dime for. It's something that's part of the Falcon experience. And so I would say that that's what it is, but my customers could probably tell you more what they appreciate most about Falcon, and maybe it's something different.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody has their own different story or play on exactly what that means to them at certain points during the relationship. I know one of the biggest challenges of all generational family businesses is deciding where they need to evolve and then what they need to protect as they grow, and really kind of balancing that tension, almost like a positive tension between evolution and protection or stasis, or making sure that the core of the company and the culture remains strong. I'm curious how you've navigated that challenge over the past few years at Falcon.
That's a really great question, and it's top of mind for me right now. So I appreciate you asking it, because I don't have all the answers here. But we grow, so we've gone from 3 employees to now close to 300 employees, and 4 U.S. locations. And the more we grow from a sales revenue standpoint, that culture, that family culture that started out at Falcon and has been nurtured and grown over the years, it just gets harder to continue to maintain that as you have retirements happening, as leadership changes, as your sales grow. And so I think that's what's keeping me up at night lately, is just making sure, how do we maintain that culture as we grow? And there's some parts of it that just naturally are going to fall away, and we have to be okay with it. But what keeps me at Falcon too is the culture. And so it stays on my mind of, how do we continue to get bigger, but act like a family business and support our employees like a family business and keep those core values that we've had since conception. And so we're doing some work now. Actually, we just got together as a senior leadership team and put together our strategic 5-year plan that goes through 2030. And one of the main 4 goals that we have is culture and communication. And it's a big focus for us, that those 4 main goals are what we're going to focus on over the next 5 years. And that being one of them is really critical to me, because that's how we continue to have employees that want to be here. I mean, we just celebrated a retirement of 2 employees that are 40 plus years with the business.
Wow.
So as those employees start to phase out, what does that look like for Falcon, and how do we maintain that culture? And so that's something that's been heavy on my mind. I don't have the answers there yet, but we're definitely really focused on it as a team, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart, because we work with these people for 40 plus hours a week. We've got to continue to enjoy it and continue to have this culture. And culture is something that, if you don't work on it continuously, or if you don't define what culture is, it will define itself. And chances are, if it defines itself, it's not going to be what you want it to be. And so that's my main focus moving forward through 2030.
Are there any company traditions at Falcon that you guys do, either fun things or community service type things, or anything that are you kind of really associate with the culture of the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Philanthropy is really big for us. We've always supported all the communities that we've been in and made sure that we're good stewards, in those communities and to our employees. And so philanthropy is something that's always top of mind. We do, actually, for our local United Way, we do a 2-to-1 match. That's been something that we've done for a really long time, and we continue to do, because it's really important, obviously, to take care of the communities that we're in. And other traditions like profit sharing, we do profit sharing. So we pay back to our employees 15% of our profits pre-tax. And that's something that I don't ever want to go away. That's something that Don started, Guy and Jay have carried on. And now Kyle and I are both very passionate about that as well. If our employees are helping to build this business, they should get some profits and some benefits of that as well. And we also do some fun things, like we always do family picnics in the summer, and then we do Christmas parties in the winter, both for the kids and the adults. And so there's some fun things there that allow us to get out and hang out outside of work and interact in ways that we don't normally get to, that I think are important to our employees. We also celebrate anniversaries. We celebrate milestones if we hit, big sales or things like that. And we have a really fun employee relations teams at every facility, but they go around and do fun things like celebrate national days. So like say it's National Popcorn Day and we give all of our employees popcorn or something like that.
Yeah.
And they just do that randomly. That makes things a little bit more fun and mixes things up. So.
And I know that as a leader, you put a lot of focus on building strong relationships with both customers and with your internal team. I'm curious, coming up as a leader in the business and particularly, as a third generation leader, did you have to work to transition a lot of relationships and trust from your dad and your uncle to yourself as you kind of assume more of a leadership role in the company?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, honestly, I didn't really grow up around the business. So I grew up mostly in Virginia. That's where my mom lives. And so I wasn't really around the business a ton. When I would visit my dad, I, would visit from time to time, but it was never like Falcon was in my future. That wasn't even on my radar, really. And with some encouragement from my uncle and my grandfather, that's where my path led me. And I moved back to South Dakota to go to college. So that helped. It was one of my 3 part-time jobs that I had in college. So that helped a little bit too. But no, it definitely, I moved through a number of different positions in Falcon, and I've worked in almost every single one of our facilities except for the Portland facility. And so when I held the role of plant manager at the Brookings facility, which is our flagship facility, I sat that entire team down because they saw me when I was young. They watched me grow up. There's so many times I'd be walking around and they'd say, I remember you when you were in diapers and you were this big. And so I sat that team down actually when I was exiting that role. And I said to them, thank you so much for accepting me as a leader. You saw me in every phase of life, basically. And you still looked at me with respect and you still listened to me as if, I was the founding member of this business. And so I think the way I value relationships and how I came back into the business was in a way that was very humble and was not assuming that I would ever be in a role like this. And I think that helped me a lot. And just the fact that, I'm vulnerable with the team members and relationships are something that comes easy to me, have all helped me out a great deal. But, there are still times Guy and Jay come in and interact with employees. And I think that's really important. There's still a lot of trust there. They are a big reason why our culture is the way it is. So I always encourage that. Why? They're not taking anything away from me as a leader. They're not, they're here to help that culture and help continue to be a stability aspect of this business. And people respect them. They've done a lot in this business and they've earned that and they deserve that. And so I'm always encouraging of their involvement in what they do here. And I wish they would come in here more. So
that's great. I love that kind of like abundance mindset when it comes to leadership within the business, especially across the generations, because I feel like so oftentimes you see people kind of like waiting or needing somebody to like totally remove themselves before they really feel empowered and supported within the organization, or they feel like, if you come back in, you are taking something away from me or you're undermining me in some way. But it sounds like you guys have a really, just abundance-minded approach when it comes to that.
They don't step on my toes and make decisions, which is great. And I respect what they've done here. And this is still their business. And so if they want to come in, and even if they wanted to make the decisions, they could. This is still their business. And so it tends to be a power struggle between families sometimes. But I think we've just had really open and honest conversations. And it helps all of us at the end of the day just understand, okay, where do we all want to take this thing and what does this look like? And when you're all on the same page and communicate openly like that, it just makes things a lot easier.
Mm. It's also interesting, like I'm hearing a little bit of a pattern from, your grandfather not really, coming into the business with the intention that it was going to be a family business or a generational business, and you now leading the business and not really intending that as your career. It feels almost like the business needs you and you guys respond to that versus like pushing it the other way of like, we need this business to grow because I need a career or I need a path. Instead, it feels much more like a servant leadership piece of our people need us, the business needs us. And so we're kind of here to serve.
Great point. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it can really help with both the longevity and that kind of natural culture build versus the sense of entitlement or things that sometimes can kind of permeate family businesses or at least the concern of perception around it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're listening to Building Unbreakable Brands, the podcast all about brand stewardship and crafting an enduring legacy. I've been talking with Jenn Barlund, a proud third-generation owner of Falcon Plastics. Now I'm going to be turning the mic over to the next generation. My son Henry has some questions for Jenn. So take it away, Henry.
Hi, Jenn. What's the weirdest thing that you've made out of plastic?
That's a really good question, Henry. We make a lot of different items out of plastic. I would say the weirdest thing, and maybe the coolest thing, we make some ammunition trays out of plastic. So when you buy ammunition, they come in little plastic trays. And the reason we started to make these ammunition trays, it's one of the only proprietary products that we have. The reason we started making these is because we saw a need for it in the market, and it allowed us to use all of our regrind from all of our other products that can't use reground material like medical products back in without putting them in the landfill. And so we have a lot of products internally that, like I mentioned, don't allow us to use regrind. So anything medical, consumer medical, food grade, anything like that, that would have to be completely virgin material. All of that waste that happens in that process needed to go somewhere. And so internally, we had a team member that brought this idea out. He found that there was a need in the marketplace, and we purchased the molds, and now that's what we make. And we make so many of them now that we actually purchase regrind material to make them outside of what we use internally. And so our goal always is to keep everything out of the landfill that we can. And that has allowed us to do that. And then also keep other people's waste out of the landfill.
What's your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is being able to work with the team at Falcon Plastics. I have a really great team around me. It feels more like I get to hang out with a lot of people I like every single day versus going to work. And I think that's really important. And I think a lot of people miss that in their careers is, we have to be together every single day for 40 plus hours a week. We might as well like what we're doing and have fun. And this feels really fun to me, what we're doing here. It's very exciting. And being able to leave an impact on the world. And that's one of our biggest motivators here at Falcon Plastics is making the world a better place, and doing so through the surgical products that we make, the electronic components that we make, the construction components that we make. Making a positive impact is important.
Do you have any advice for a kid who's interested in working in their family business?
Work hard, and then leave for a while and do something different. Because when you leave for a while, you'll realize that it's really special. Your family business is really special. And this happened to me exactly. It wasn't in my plan to work at the family business, but when I left and worked in some other industries and worked in different manufacturing, I realized that Falcon Plastics was really special, and that I don't have to be an inventor, or I don't have to start my own business and become an entrepreneur. I can build on what Falcon, what Don and Guy and Jay have already built, and I can continue to build it and add my flair on it and make it really special. So that was a big realization for me. And family business is something that not everybody can be a part of. So it's really special.
Thanks so much, Jenn. I also have a joke for you. Why did the worker quit his job at the chess piece factory?
Ooh, I don't know. Tell me, Henry.
He got tired of always having to work the night shift.
That's good. I like that. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Henry. And thank you so much for being on Building Unbreakable Brands, Jenn. Really enjoyed having you. And I think you had some great insights and lessons about your journey. As unlikely as maybe it has been, it sounds like it's worked out great, both for you and for the team and the company and the family. So
Yeah, thank you, Megan. I appreciate it.
Yeah. If people want to connect with you or want to learn more about Falcon Plastics, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn, I'm doing a big campaign on LinkedIn right now, so I'm posting all the time. So I'm getting on there to interact a lot. LinkedIn or through the website are two great ways to connect.
All right, great. We will link to those in the show notes. And again, thanks again for the time and for sharing a bit about your journey. We look forward to watching it as you guys continue 50 years and beyond. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I think the story of the making of an unexpected family business at Falcon Plastics is so interesting because instead of making generational transition harder, it almost seems like it made it easier. I guess it's because this came with no expectations, no pressure, no power struggles, something that every generational business dreams of. I look forward to seeing what's in store in the next 50 years for Falcon. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to rate us and leave us a review. Thank you so much for listening to Building Unbreakable Brands.